Okay, welcome everybody. This is Philo. We are in the IOTA Discord again, Thursday, the 1st of September, and we are doing our regular community governance meeting. Currently, we are focusing to get working and functioning Shimmer Community Treasury set up, and this is what this meeting is about today. Little agenda prepared for today would be the main focus, of course, on the Shimmer Treasury. I would like to talk and define the mission statement for this whole thing. I think that's a super important foundational thing, and also talk about the guiding principles. I think if we can figure out these two major points in the whole thing. Everything else that we want to define and um, rules and structures that we want to create will become much easier if we have these two big points really defined and decided on, because then you basically can just follow to adjust things that they align with these principles and statements. And I think this is what we should focus on today, to come to a good discussion, to maybe come to a couple of decisions already. And depends on how far this will take. We can also maybe talk about to define some short-term or even long-term goals for a treasury. Then I just created a thread in the governance discussions channel, because next week we will have somebody joining us from a team that is building currently on Shimmer. It's called DFire, and he has um, a lot of experience with grant programs. They applied to 10 or 12 or 13 different ones in the last couple of months, and we could prepare a couple of questions that we want to ask him. And so, if you navigate to the governance discussions channel, you will find my post there with the thread. And if you like to ask some questions, just post them there so he can prepare a bit what he will be talking about next Tuesday. And as always, we are open for questions. We are open for suggestions from you. If you find a certain topic confusing, or you want to add or something, just speak up. And if not, just keep it until the end, and there will be enough time for questions if people want to ask them. Okay, so let's maybe. So also there are, this whole thing is still based on these two documents. The first document is the proposal that I created, the treasury idea. Is a work document. It's open for comments, and it was just kind of a brainstorming and a collection of ideas. Mainly took a lot of inspiration from what Aave is doing with their grants program, and also some other grants program from other Web3 projects. And then we have the Notion page, where mainly JD Sutton has put up a lot of really good questions and comments about this document, and especially questions that he thinks we should talk about and need to define to make clear that we have alignment inside this little group, and to figure out how to come forward and to address these things. And this is basically what I want to talk about with all of you today, and work on finding some solutions here. So clear, so far, is this clear for everyone? Has anybody questions or suggestions? The links to those documents you will find if you go to the Shimmer Treasury channel. I just post the link to the channel in the in the chat here. So we have if you go to the right top corner of your screen, there is an in chat channel here where we can communicate, and so you will just find the link to the Treasury channel there, and you will find the docs there. If we talk about the mission statement, I think maybe to be clear and to make clear what a mission statement usually is, it's mostly really a generic and often very, very open and short description of what something is. Yeah. Some projects have some really simple thing. Yeah, it's just like this. Or if you think about products in the real world, yeah, it's sometimes a catchy phrase that they use for marketing. Yeah, of course, for a project like a committee that has a purpose, it should say and it should give a clear alignment of what this whole thing is all about. And we had a couple of proposals how this mission statement should and could look like, and we also talked last week already about that. My general idea was to keep it simple and short, which would be something around like a committee-based treasury to support the Shimmer and IOTA, and I put this in brackets, and I'll explain you why, and empower its ecosystem and community. Then we have some suggestion from JD Sutton. He thinks maybe we can say a community-based treasury that supports the Shimmer and IOTA networks, which empowers positively the ecosystems and communities. And he also I think he did a poll on Twitter, and some people did like the version community-based. Yeah, so here's the difference is a committee-based or a community-based treasury that directly supports the Shimmer network and positively empowers the entire IOTA ecosystem. And you see already what I mean, how difficult it can be to find the correct wordings here. Especially between these two things, that JD posted. The first one is clearly saying that it is a committee-based treasury, and the other one is just said it's a community-based thing. Yeah, it's a community-based is of course a broader term that can mean all kind of things. And then it uses the word directly. Yeah, directly supporting the Shimmer network is also a quite strict definition. Also, you can talk about what empowering really means or what positively really means. And also the word the entire IOTA ecosystem can also be difficult because if you think about later on, if there would be a committee set up and it needs to make decisions which project or which proposals it supports and funds, in the end, you will always have to check these decisions against does it fit with the mission statement. And so I think it's sometimes difficult to make too much exclusions or inclusions into such a statement because in the end it could hinder you to fund something that is actually great, but it just does not fit exactly the definition of such a mission statement. And I know last week we talked about these and thought about, okay, should we integrate the phrase IOTA into this mission statement? And I think last week we were kind of a bit of agreeing that we would maybe like to include it, but I've thought about that, and basically, if we would write it like this to support the Shimmer and IOTA network and empower its ecosystem and community, the problem would be if we would have a project that clearly says, hey, we are whatever, a big application. We are already live on Polygon, on whatever, in a couple of other projects. We are super interested to build something on Shimmer. We need a couple of funds to pay for our devs for the work to integrate this in Shimmer. But we are currently, and maybe also never, interested to launch this product in the IOTA network. Or we are not sure yet, or we can't guarantee, or something like this. The question would then come up if they clearly say, okay, we are just only focused on Shimmer. It doesn't, IOTA currently or also in the future doesn't matter for us. Would we decline such project, even if it's just like, I mean, if it's like really great, known, has a lot of users, they would bring customers and whatever with them. But if it clearly says that it will not, that it will do nothing on IOTA, would we need to decline it if we would have such a mission statement that clearly states that things need to support Shimmer and IOTA? So my question is to you, what do you think about all this?
Could you just use the word or instead of and?
Yes, but then it would automatically mean that if a proposal comes in for a project that wants to build only on IOTA, it would be funded from the Shimmer Community Treasury, which I think is not really fair because these Shimmer tokens, first of all, in my opinion, need to be available for something on Shimmer. So it definitely, all things need to do something on Shimmer that get tokens from the Shimmer token holders. Yeah? Because we also have to see that not all IOTA token holders are Shimmer token holders, and not all Shimmer token holders are potentially IOTA token holders. So there will be differences between it. Yeah, that's the difficulty in the wording. Um, Wait, just let me check something. I did already make um, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? So my idea basically would be that we instead of doing this, um, we keep it out. So we leave IOTA out of that because, I mean, in my opinion, everything that builds on Shimmer is kind of on a second level always important and supporting for IOTA, because if Shimmer gets successful and applications and things are successful on Shimmer, this will always be good for IOTA because stuff will then be ported over to IOTA. IOTA 2.0 will maybe be faster developed the more adoption and usage we get on Shimmer. So there will always be kind of positive effects on that. But yeah, you could either say to support Shimmer or IOTA, but then basically you would use Shimmer tokens without having any positive effect on the Shimmer network, potentially if you fund a project that is only focused on IOTA. Yeah, so that's the difficult thing, to find the correct wording here. And so my opinion goes a bit more into leave the term IOTA out of that, and maybe define it later in the in the guiding principles, because there we can always say something like that we would always favor projects that also or additionally do something good, or additionally have a positive impact on IOTA. Yeah, so if you have two projects that are completely the same somehow and would also maybe ask for the same amount of money, and you need to make a decision between the two, you would then basically choose the one that has also a positive effect on IOTA instead of the other one that only has a positive effect on Shimmer or something like that. Yeah. some thoughts from my side. Anybody else got some opinions on that?
I think what you're saying makes sense. I guess all the Shimmer tokens are going to be given to people that staked on IOTA. So they're still IOTA stakeholders right now. Eventually they'll be traded on the open market. But I
Yeah.
guess if you leave it as Shimmer or IOTA, then you just leave it up to the community to decide in the end. It doesn't limit you in the fact that you couldn't support a project on IOTA.
Mhm.
But if the community decides that's not appropriate, they would just not approve the funding.
Okay. Basically, that's not a bad idea, Rob, I think. Um, yeah, okay, it would basically mean that purely IOTA-focused projects could be funded, but there is no must. So it would then be really a decision um, based on what is the project doing, what is the project asking for. Um, yeah, and I'm just thinking about a bit in the future. As you said in the beginning, Shimmer token holders will all be uh, IOTA token holders. Yeah? But eventually, if there will be exchange listings, a couple of months trading and things like that, so people might buy into the Shimmer network that have no relation or don't hold any IOTA tokens and things like this. And then I think it could potentially come to some situations where basically the community would say, okay, kind of I just invested in Shimmer currently, and but now tokens from this treasury flow out into the IOTA network. Yeah, I mean it's like very unlikely that stuff like this happens, but maybe with this or wording, this could be good a good way to do this because then it's really just on the committee. Um, to do this stuff. Yeah, and there's maybe also like there might be some community events or something that are kind of IOTA focused and that need some support. This could then come from the Shimmer treasury potentially without having a direct influence on the Shimmer network, and still it will be a net positive for both and also for the Shimmer network. Yeah, I think that's a nice addition. Um, I'll maybe note that. Or Asa, are you taking notes? Yeah.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, cool. Maybe just make a mark. I think that makes quite some sense. From the other things that JD wrote down here, is somebody kind of more in favor of something of the ones that JD submitted here with a committee-based treasury that supports IOTA and Shimmer networks with it empowers positively the ecosystems and communities, or that empowers the entire IOTA ecosystem. Somebody thinks we should go for something more in this direction.
I can hear you.
Yeah, I just waited if somebody wanted to state any opinion on the sentences that JD proposed here.
Yeah, Philo, I think maybe do you have Nickel and Dime muted?
Oh,
Because
let me
he's trying to
see.
talk.
Oh yes, my God. I why did I mute
So
you?
can you,
Okay, now I hear
uh,
you.
all right. Well, so I just wanted to say that we should actually do it the other way around. So I believe like the IOTA treasury should work that it can fund projects that want to build on Shimmer and IOTA, but
Hmm.
the Shimmer treasury should solely focus on Shimmer
Yeah.
because yeah, that's what just my thoughts.
Yeah, that's a good. I mean, that's a good point. I see it. I see it similar. Yeah, especially as we can say, okay, the IOTA treasury will go live. Of course, it will go live later, but it also will go live once we get the Stardust features and stuff like this on IOTA. So there will be in a fast during this first year, very likely there will be the IOTA treasury will be opened, and so then there will be anyway no reason to use any Shimmer tokens for something that happens on IOTA because it has its own treasury. Um, Potentially, what also could happen, of course, if the community is happy with the way this Shimmer thing operates, maybe we come to a conclusion to just include the IOTA, like include operating the IOTA treasury or a part of the IOTA treasury tokens into this system here. And then anyway, you could have a clear distinction between projects that build on IOTA and projects that want to build on Shimmer, and you really would not need to mix those funds up. Yeah? And until then, maybe it just will be enough to focus on doing stuff directly on Shimmer. Um, like I said, I'm also kind of a bit in favor of focusing with Shimmer tokens on Shimmer, but I know that also others have other opinions there, so I don't want to rule it out. Just wanted to hear what people here are thinking, or if they would have a real problem with it if we just say, okay, we leave the term IOTA out of the mission statement. We can, like I said, we can later define it always that if projects that have also a positive impact on IOTA, we would always kind of try to favor them or give them a little bit extra weight in the decision-making process and stuff like this. So, but for this mission thing, it might be, in my opinion, better to leave IOTA out because it might cause some troubles later. Yeah, and then just wanted to put it out there. Maybe we really don't need to make a final decision on this. Everybody should put some thoughts into that a couple of days and maybe comment in the Notion page that JD has shared or just comment something in the Shimmer Treasury channel about your ideas. Yeah, but I'm very much in favor of, like I said, keeping it a little bit generic, keeping it very open without kind of restricting things. Yeah, what Rob said also with the or will be a thing, but then, like I said, you might have the issue that people don't agree to move money out of the Shimmer Treasury into pure IOTA focused things, especially if later on the IOTA Treasury will anyway will be available. But that's good points. So I think it's something we should still think about a little bit and come to maybe in the next or in a week or something in the meeting come to a more clear decision. Okay, and then the next point, I think, and that's pretty important, and especially the more we can agree on those things, like I said, everything else later on in defining the details of how the committee should operate and be structured, it will very likely be important to have these things very well defined because this will make it very, very easy then to from this to get to some operational structures and rules and things like this. We have kind of a combination of what my initial thoughts on guiding principles would have been, and I think most of you know that we had a group that was called the Bridge Fund. They also did put a lot of great work over a couple of months into thinking about a treasury, how it could operate, and JD combined these two things into, I think we have like 11 guiding principles currently. So there would be the thing, of course, that a proposal must be relevant to the Shimmer ecosystem. I think this is something that is nobody needs to argue with this. This is a clear statement, if something is not relevant to Shimmer, it's not something that is interesting for funding. If somebody asks for a project in Cardano from the Shimmer treasury, it will just be declined based on guiding principles. Yeah. Here is maybe still the interesting point. If we say, okay, we include IOTA, then it potentially also would need to be included in this first statement. All proposals, if approved, should provide a positive value to the Shimmer ecosystem. An additional positive value on the IOTA or assembly ecosystem is a plus. This is what I meant. This is how I have phrased it after I thought a little bit about that. Yeah. So first of all, positive value for Shimmer. That's the most important part. If it has an additional positive value for IOTA or even assembly and stuff like this, it's always a plus. It's always something that we should keep in mind. And if we have to decide between two projects, we maybe will then potentially use the funds for something that has a broader effect on all the IOTA assembly Shimmer ecosystem project. Yeah. And like I said, if somebody has any objections here or doesn't agree with what I'm just talking here, just please just say it, and we should then discuss and talk about that. Number 3 is something that we took from, I think, from Mariana, proposed this already for the Shimmer governance framework in general. This is basically coming from it's a text based on something that is used in the European Union. Yeah, so all proposals must not segregate individuals, organizations based on sex. Bang. Yeah, so this is a basic human rights charter that, of course, is important to state. And if somebody is coming up with some racist stuff and stuff here, yeah, that's not anything that this treasury should ever be even thinking about to fund. Number 4 is something that I find interesting, and I think this is coming from the Bridge Fund. And it says all proposals should not have been submitted or accepted by other funding DAOs or organizations. What I have added here is in the IOTA ecosystem. I think Bridge Fund, they even said, should not have been submitted or accepted by funding DAOs or organizations everywhere. And if this is hidden or later found out, the proposal will be halted and all funding will be stopped until the situation is investigated. Additional funding requests for extensions of further development of such a project can be granted that go beyond what was submitted or approved by other funding DAOs or organizations. It's a long text and basically means if a project is coming to Shimmer and has already it has let's say they have an application. Let's say they have a browser extension that connects to Firefly that wants to connect to Firefly wallet to use some tokens in any DeFi lending protocol or whatever. Yeah, something not super complex. Maybe they ask for $8,000 to port their already existing and working solution from Polygon and Ethereum or whatever also into Shimmer. And maybe they already have received a grant from Polygon for their first implementation of porting their app from Ethereum to Polygon. And now they want to port their application to Shimmer. And of course, this is work for them. They need maybe potentially do some adjustments. They need to put some devs on there, include and implement this thing. And they asked for the Shimmer community to fund this work. The question would then be, would we say, hey, you already got a couple of $1,000s here and a couple of $1,000s there. Your product is already developed. You have to do it yourself. Yeah, take the integration costs on yourself because you will potentially later on make money from the Shimmer community. Or would we say, okay, that's like still very interesting for Shimmer to have such a project like this in the ecosystem. We are okay with paying for this integration work and then be happy to have such an application or such a team in our ecosystem. And so this is a bit the tricky part on such a phrase that I think it can be difficult if you look into it from the first of all from the standpoint of a developer or from a builder. It might potentially lead to some lost opportunities because in the reality it's really like this that projects that have so many options and there are so many ecosystems and chains out there. Very, very likely, many of them will, even if they would like, they would not consider to build on Shimmer without having, let's say, a basic cost, some basic costs covered from such a fund, because then they will just go to the next project and the next chain where they easily will get this funding, yeah, without questions asked. Yeah, so this is a bit interesting to hear your
Philo,
opinions. Yeah,
well, I was on the bridge fund, and I can add a little bit more detail to this. The intention was, you know, using your example, if the project came over, they want to fund this browser extension on Shimmer,
yeah,
and they go to the EDF and they ask for $20,000 to do it. Then they go to the Shimmer Treasury and ask for $20,000, and they
yes,
don't disclose that
yeah,
they've asked multiple IOTA related
yes,
projects for the same money.
yeah. That's the thing.
That
This is why I also included then the sentence um, by other funding DAOs or organizations in the IOTA ecosystem. Yeah, I think
Mhm.
this is the clear thing. Of course, if they have asked EDF and they have been declined, or even they got funding from that and they don't tell this, of course, that's absolutely a no-go criteria. Yeah, so paying double for the same thing is something that needs to be completely avoided. Yeah, and so I think if we uh, if we focus on this, that we say, okay, wherever they have already received funding in the IOTA ecosystem, they can't receive the same funding again from us or from the EDF. Yeah, same. We funded them, and then they go over to EDF. EDF would, of course, also decline them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the main part of the first portion, is that we just don't want to fund the same the
Yeah.
same work. But
Yeah.
the second part of that paragraph is that if they come to the Shimmer Treasury and say, we've already gotten funding for this portion, but we want to add some additional functionality and we
Yeah.
need some extra funds to do that, then they can get the funding.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's also what I thought. So I thought, yeah, like, okay, they got already funding, like you said, they got funding from the EDF. They got $20,000 for basic build of their application, and everything runs smooth and things. And then they want to add some additional features that have not been part of the first rollout or the first version, and they say, okay, we can now integrate blah 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 this with MetaMask or whatever, but it will cost us 15K to do this. Of course, then the treasury could fund this because it's a new workload or it's a new task, and it has not been funded before by somebody else. So that's I think that's always a great thing. Yeah. Okay, cool. Just asking into the round. So these four statements here, these 4 points. Does anybody have any problem with how they are currently formulated? would you object against saying, okay, these 4 points as they have been stated here? And like Rob said, a lot of stuff of this has also been thought out in the bridge fund already. Could we just say, okay, we currently agree on these 4 points and take them now as granted? Yeah, we will maybe revisit this in the next meeting again. And if nobody until this time has some objections against this, we would take them as point 1 to 4 of the guiding principles.
And now I have to add that if it should be the same, it should adhere to the guiding to the mission statement, right? So if we
Yeah,
remove IOTA from the mission statement,
yeah,
then why do we have it in our guiding principles? It
yes.
doesn't make sense
Yeah,
to me.
that's really a good point. Yeah, if like you said, if we remove IOTA currently from the mission statement, then we would also need to remove it from this point
Yeah.
too.
It could still be the same for the rest, but
Yeah,
instead of IOTA, we add Shimmer ecosystem because projects can still get funding from building on IOTA, right?
yeah,
So if they
yeah,
build on Shimmer and they decide to port it and with extra functionalities, then they should be able to get funding there too.
yes,
So
yeah. Yeah, yeah, and also like things later, like you said, they have deployed on Shimmer, but of course, moving things over to IOTA can be very, very easy, but it also can require a bit of work depending. So they might ask for a second support then from the IOTA treasury. Um, okay, I think this is something once we have final agreement on the mission statement and we would really say, okay, remove IOTA there, then we should also remove it currently from all these statings and just go pure Shimmer. But I would like really to invite the people to think about that. Leave some comments in the governance channel. Um, and yeah, then we can potentially make in the next session we can make a clear decision on this. Point 3, I think this is nothing to discuss there. I think we definitely can and must agree on such this general statement in 3. And point 1, I think also. Yeah. Okay, that's basically nice, but like you said, we have to figure out exactly how we want to define it in relation to IOTA. Next ones, the point 5 that we have currently as a guiding principle is the proposer or team should be capable of delivering the proposed project. Evaluating this is the job of the committee. Yeah? Clearly, somehow, if somebody comes up and says, okay, I'm going to build this super amazing application for you, um, the committee, of course, needs to ask and figure out, are you capable of doing this? And this means evaluating, has the proposer any history in our ecosystem? Is it a known developer? Has he or she already built similar applications either in our ecosystem, or then they would need to bring proof that they are capable of it because they have built this or something similar already in another ecosystem. Yeah. So if they can show in their GitHub history stuff like this that they have built already and they have the needed experience to deliver such a product, then it's cool. But if somebody says, okay, I'm just having a great idea, but I don't have real proof that I did anything related to this already before, I also cannot really prove that I know how to code and things like this, then of course it would need to be declined, and then it could just be declined based on these basic principles. The committee could then say, okay, sorry, great idea, but we don't think you haven't shown us anything that tells us that you are capable of delivering what you promise here. And so, sorry, we can't give you the proposed funding for that. Yeah. Think that's a good thing. Of course, also like the thing, evaluating this is the job of the committee. Either the committee is qualified themselves, or the committee must maybe potentially get additional help from maybe IOTA Foundation engineering or things like this, if it's very complex code-related stuff. But of course, you also cannot request an audit or something like this. It's just really about making sure that the team or the person that proposes to do this has any history that would make it very obvious that they can deliver what they promise. Yeah. Then the next one is the point 6, and I made there also some comment on this. Current, it would state the requested budget should match the proposed development, neither too little nor too much. And also it would, this is still part of it, some average should be accepted within a given percentage, for example 20% plus minus, however 70% estimated overage would be unacceptable. I think this is something we definitely need to work on this. I would go with something that is a bit more, I think it's a bit more clear, because you would basically watch out if they propose something, you would look out for industry standards and for comparable tasks. And for things like this, you can really either look in other grant programs. Yeah, so like we have seen AVE, and so every project mostly makes it public how much they fund for an application. Yeah, and so I think with a little bit research, you can quite good figure out what an application normally will cost a team to develop. Also, the hourly rates for developers, for software engineers, it's not something that is completely hidden and secret. So if somebody comes with something and asks for 50K, but you ask a bit around, and but basically whoever you ask tells you, okay, I'm a developer, I could build this for 20K. Then there's a mismatch in the fair market value, or in the proposal that needs to be adjusted. And then I would basically say, if the team really wants to build, yeah, and they really want to do it, but they then the committee would need to be able to say, okay, yes, you can, but instead of 50K, you only get 25, because basically we don't believe that you need 50K to build this. And if you want to do it for 25, or yeah, because this is the industry standard we figured out. It's your calculations don't match to what anyone else is doing, so you're asking for too much money. Either you reduce your proposal and you accept this reduced thing that is based on our best knowledge, and or we cannot fund it. Opinions? Comments?
I have a comment on that. What that does to the committee, you have to make sure that the committee understands how to develop products. So if we have a committee that doesn't have the right technical capabilities, we might not be able to evaluate the project properly. That's my concern.
Yeah, that's exactly a very important point. So very clearly, we will need people in such a committee that have such an experience, or if they don't have, they will need to be able to get such resources from somebody that has such an experience. Yeah, especially I think if it comes to large projects, if a project comes and asks for 250K, um, even if you have experienced software developers in a committee, it will very likely make sense to minimum to get second or third opinions from others. Yeah, so this could be maybe IOTA Foundation engineering and research in some points, or you would really need to take some time into this. So the committee would need to put some time into this um, to do some research what projects in this range usually cost or usually get funded. And I mean, if the team has really good reasons and can really lay out very exactly where those costs are coming from and how they come to this is really then part of the evaluation process of such a project that the committee would really need to take some time and go through this proposal together with the team, so that they really can be sure that basically they don't rip off the funding. Yeah. Um, yeah, and so I think with such a defined guiding principle, it absolutely puts the committee also under a responsibility to do this research. Yeah, so if later the community figures out that a project that, because later on the code, everything will be open source. You will see basically what this project has developed. If the community figures out that a project that basically had a code development or a product development that usually would be done for 10K and they got 80K from the committee, I think then we will have, first of all, problems with the community, and then really we will need to the community will need to evaluate if the committee is doing the job correctly. Yeah. Um, and I think with such a statement and such a guiding principle, it definitely needs to make sure that things like this will really be checked and really be evaluated if it really matches um, a proper budget for such work. Okay. Another really important point is, I think, the number 7. So project owners must make it known if they have connections to committee members or other conflicts of interest. Yeah, I think this is absolutely important, that if a proposal, if a team comes in and they have any relationship, either being it private or being it business related, or any financial connections, or they would benefit or profit, or the committee members would somehow benefit or profit from such a project being implemented and getting funded. This needs to be made very, very clear from the project owner, but also from the committee members. I don't know if we have this, but this might be also a good, another guiding principle that we would need to implement, is that committee members also would need to state clearly and abstain from doing anything in the evaluation or in the decision-making process of such a project if they have, let's say, large large financial interests and stuff like this. Yeah. So if one of the committee members owns a pretty big chunk of tokens of such a project that asks for funding, um, he definitely will need to make it public and state that he cannot take part in the decision-making process of such a project. Yeah. And the 8, only projects that align with the community treasury's fund goals can be funded. Is something, of course, also I'll talk later maybe, or we will also think about to define short-term goals. And so if there is something that is basically a great project, but let's say because the treasury will only, first of all, be set up for a year, but it would be something that would maybe take 2 years to develop. Yeah. And I think we should clearly define that this thing should focus on short-term, tangible results instead of things that will only be available in a couple of years. Then this would be basically something that would then not be possible to fund because, first of all, when it's delivered, the committee might not even exist anymore, and so then there will also be nobody that could basically evaluate if the delivered stuff is actually this what was promised. Yeah, so that might be okay and good to have such a sentence included so that it just some things will not make sense for this treasury committee to fund, especially in the beginning, if they are focused on things that are extremely long term or extremely just out of scope for what this treasury committee would look and would prioritize to fund. Okay, so let's think about point number 5. I think this is something that we can agree on. Evaluating this, I don't know if we even would need to make it more clear or make it more defined what evaluating means. I would not make it more detailed because this is something that really then will maybe be good in the hands of the committee, and also there will be a committee lead that will need to make sure that these things are done properly. Number 6, I think, is something we also with the statement we might need to revisit again if the sentence as it stands will be clear enough in regards to the capability of the committee to evaluate such a project. Maybe we could add something that if the committee feels that it is not capable of evaluating the proposed cost basis, that it has to decline such a proposal. Yeah, if there is nobody in the committee that is capable of doing this, and they also don't find external support or external devs or partners that can do this, or it would, let's say, it would maybe require something that you would need basically find an audit firm that audits the stuff, and this basically would cost more than the money that they ask for. Then things like this just cannot be funded. This maybe then be something that can apply for the EDF because they have maybe more dev resources and things like this, but this then may be too complex and too difficult for a community-based committee to make a proper decision on, and then they will just have to say, sorry, we are not capable of figuring out if what you tell us here is basically doable for this budget. We are sorry, but we can't fund you. Yeah. I think 7, the conflict of interest clause is pretty clear, and 8 also. But like I said, we will maybe next meeting go over this again, and then come maybe to some final decisions if there are no objections in the group and nobody finds something during the next days, makes a comment in the channel, then we will very likely go with this version as part of the proposal. Okay. Anybody, any comments on that, or Rob?
I just I feel like number 8 is a little bit. It needs to have some more detail because it seems kind of unneeded to say that in a way. The way that it's worded.
Yeah. I mean, in the end, we could. I'm always a fan of cutting things out. Like you said, if it doesn't make really sense, then potentially we don't need this as a guiding principle, because kind of you're right. I mean, we have must be relevant to the Shimmer ecosystem. So we already have some pretty clear definitions of what projects or proposals need to be. Yeah, provide positive value. Blah la 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 la. So potentially, it might be depending if we will define very clear goals. So I thought about something like, let's say, if we would have a year and we would divide this year in 4 quarters, and we might think about, okay, we might start. Potentially, we can start when the Shimmer EVM goes live. Yeah, something like this, which will be hopefully very early, and the market and the price and anything will still be very unstable and potentially also very low. So we might think about to say, okay, the first quarter we focus, our goal is to concentrate funding on outreach and marketing and making Shimmer known in the DLT community. And we won't do any project funding for apps in the first 3 months. Yeah, then this would be a goal. And so if a project applies in the first quarter for code stuff, and we have defined that we don't do it, okay, then it can't be funded. Yeah, but this is really something that we have to think about. If we will not define very, very clear goals or specific goals, then, like you said, this sentence makes very likely not any sense to have it in there. Yeah, or we would need to make it very more detailed and defined. Yeah. Fits, Roper. Maybe Asa just noted, maybe we really can just skip number 8 if we are not going to define very, very specific goals. Yeah. What else? We have, I think these are the last ones that we have, 9, 10, and 11. In any analysis published by the committee, a highlight and extra weight will be given to projects that offer to replenish the treasury with which the committee believes to be credible. This is coming from JD. So basically, this goes a bit together with potential long-term goals. Yeah. So if we would define that the long-term goal of the treasury is to become self-sustainable, to basically not run out of funds, and find ways to refund the treasury through the activities of the committee, then if you have a project or a proposal that kind of promises to offer such reflow of capital, of tokens, of whatever positive impact to the treasury, the committee would need to consider this and also put an extra weight in the decision-making process, and basically favor such proposals that promise to offer maybe a continuous or even also a one-time return to the community treasury. Yeah, this could be that a project says, okay, we need funds to build our application. We want to launch a token on the Shimmer EVM, blah, blah, blah. Once we are launched, the treasury will get, as a return for their help in building, the treasury will get 0.2% of our tokens, yeah, like an airdrop. Or the community helps an application to build a decentralized exchange, yeah, and the decentralized exchange says, okay, therefore that you give us now $150,000 or $200,000 to build our thing, you will get the next 2 years 0.005% of all fees generated in the protocol, and they will go to the treasury. Yeah? If a project comes with such a proposal, then the guiding principle would require that the committee puts this as a positive aspect in the decision making and favors such projects. The thing is, of course, there will not be any binding legal contracts done between a team that asks for funding and the committee. So basically, if they later on decide, no, we don't want to give you our trading fees, or sorry, no, you can only have 0.0005% of our tokens and not what we have promised, you will not have any force or any power to change that. The only thing, of course, would be that they would put their reputation at risk and would potentially get problems with the community if they would play such a thing. Yeah, so it's very unlikely that a project would not do this. But of course, they can also rug pull, they can disappear, they can fail. So the team can just get into real trouble and they just disband everything, and then basically also the treasury wouldn't get anything back. Question is really, should we put such a guiding principle into this or not, or should we change the wording or something like this? What do people think? Rob, any?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good thing to have. I mean, it's a way to kind of ensure that the treasury uh, has some funds moving forward and potentially get some flowing back from successful community projects. I'm wondering if we can also possibly include um, giving a highlight and extra weight to projects that offer to have open source projects, because in the end it's a community funded project that if the project fails, maybe some other community group could take it up and develop it.
Yeah.
I don't want to say necessarily that they all need to be open source, but I think we should put some preference on those projects that are willing to share their development.
Yeah, basically, I don't know why we haven't it yet there. Of course, open source is, in my opinion, is a must. Basically, the first issue is if a project is not open source, the committee has no chance to evaluate what they are doing. Yeah, so that's the first problem is they come, they propose, they ask for money, but they will not show you any code. They just don't let you look into code. They will maybe show you in a Zoom meeting a nice prepared presentation of how their product works, but basically you can't look into it. You don't know what's going on. You might not even be able to, even if you wanted and you would have a really good dev in the team that is able to look into a code base. There might be security issues. There might be, in my opinion, the Treasury just cannot do anything for projects that are not open source or not. The thing is, I know a lot of projects, they during the development phase, they keep things in private repositories. But what you really would need to do is that they need to make sure that once they launch, they will launch with a fully open source code base, and you would basically hold money back. I don't know, maybe minimum 50% of what was promised until they completely open source their whole code. Yeah, and like you said, if there is something goes the wrong way, but the code is open source, this money will not be lost because another team can just pick it up and continue development. So in my opinion, closed source projects can't get funds from a community driven operation. Yeah, if they want to stay closed source, they would have to look maybe for other investors, VCs or whatever. Yeah, so that's a really good point. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I'm also in favor in putting such a clause in that definitely projects that are promising to refund or to let some value flow back into the treasury should definitely be welcomed and potentially also be favored. A bit of the question is always kind of is it realistically? Yeah. So if a project comes and says, "Hey, you're gonna get 10% of our tokens," then I would always ask myself, "Hey, are they really? Do they have a proper business plan? Yeah. If they kind of, yeah. I mean, but that's like maybe point to points, and so it's something that is I think it makes sense to have it in, and like Rob also said, the open source thing is super important to have it properly defined here. And yeah, why not? If they want to give something back to the community, it's great. It will also give them a good standing and a good reputation. So it's not something that we should try to avoid here. Yeah. Okay, number 10. Funding should be allocated to projects that create the highest return for the ecosystem. This is especially important considering that 10% of the. So I think that was a comment, but basically I think the principle would mean funding should be allocated to projects that create the highest return for the ecosystem. Yeah, and the rest of the sentence is more like a note or a comment. So yeah, because I mean we won't have a huge treasury, and sometimes we definitely will need to. So basically, the requested amount should somehow be set into relation of what is the potential effect that it will have on the whole Shimmer ecosystem. Yeah, and things that look like extremely promising or that are pretty clear that if they will be successful and start on Shimmer, they will have a huge multiplier effect. They potentially bring a lot of attention in the DLT space. They potentially bring already existing user base with them moving over to Shimmer because they are already existing on other ecosystems and say, okay, great, low fees, works great. We bring our existing user base of 12,000 daily active users with us. Then this, of course, would be the things that are extremely, let's say, juicy and extremely interesting for the community to prioritize in funding. And if you have 4 or 5 projects aligned, but you have to figure out they all, let's say, you have $1 million funding and you have 5 projects and all of them ask for 100K, then potentially you would need to make a decision and try to favor the one that has the most promising outlook um, on growth and potentially also locked value and TVL in the ecosystem. Yeah, and so that's important. I think that a committee will keep an eye on that and can also a little bit make estimations and foresights or try to make foresights, compare it a bit what happened in other ecosystems with similar applications and similar products, and sometimes make hard decisions and say, okay, sorry, you're a great project, but we have a limited amount of funding available, and there is another proposal that just looks, it will have a much bigger and more important effect on the whole ecosystem, and so we will favor to fund the others, and you can maybe try it again in another couple of months when the value of the treasury has increased and stuff like this. Yeah. Yeah, I think that.
I also see it that way. We
Yeah.
should really look that we get a higher return of investment for the treasury. Also, regarding the last point, if there are projects that offer to pay back, or like say you get 5% of our tokens, which essentially would make the treasury some sort of venture capital, which I think is actually a really cool thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. That's definitely good. I mean, the question is always, will they promise this just to make the committee a little bit more friendly towards the application? Yeah, so if there's a project that basically promises, yeah, we will pay you big returns, but in the end, it just looks like this thing is maybe not going to be super successful, will it then make sense to just fund them because they promise that you will get some tokens, but basically if the tokens stay useless and worthless, it doesn't help the treasury in the end. So yeah,
I think the discussion whether or whether not to fund has to be separated from that. But maybe we can say that maybe in the groups with KYC you can get a little bit more funding if you promise that.
yeah,
But of course everything must be all right. The project must
yes,
look good and not a scam. For example, we can't like say if it's like a pyramid scheme and everybody thinks that, but hey, they put us at the bottom of the pyramid, then we still have to say no.
yes, yeah, yeah. We also can't go into some gambling ideas. Of course, it might sound great, and you think like, okay, if this thing really lifts off and the treasury holds 5% of the tokens, yoo-hoo. But I don't think that this is a kind of investment strategy that the treasury should focus on. It will always need to focus on going on to the more secure side of things, and yeah, look out if such investments are taken and so returns, look out for really promising and stable and also established things. Yeah, so we might really have maybe not in the beginning, but after a couple of months we might really have some big projects approaching us. Yeah, so that are really, I mean, there are things out there that are part of all Web3 ecosystems. Yeah, you have things like Curve and Compound, and of course you will have forks, but maybe we never know. Some of those big names approach us, and they of course will be expensive to implement, but having such a in the end it will then be a partnership. Yeah, if such a really DeFi blue chip would approach and ask for funding, um, it would just be a no-brainer in the end, yeah, because the multiplier effect that you would have from something like this that says, okay, here, don't know, Aave, the original Aave is implementing Shimmer into their strategies and basically deploying You can use Shimmer in Aave as collateral and things like this. I mean, this would be extremely huge. This would kind of boost Shimmer into a region of projects where whatever they ask for, if we would have it, I would just kind of very likely say, okay, give it to them because um, the user inflow and the capital inflow and the valuation and market cap of Shimmer from such a thing would, yeah, it would just be too interesting to not do it, yeah. But that's like a little bit utopic, maybe. But like I said, if things are there that are really interesting and big to fund, and you have another proposal that is a nice project, but you say it's like, sorry, it won't have such a big effect, then the committee will very likely need to make some hard decisions because it will not have huge amounts of funding available like other ecosystems. They just can find all, yeah. They can find this and they can fund the other one and then yeah, whatever, because they have like a $300 million treasury, and so they don't have to be so nitpicky like potentially we will have to do. Okay. Basically, I think, let me see. This would be our current 11 guiding principles. Would be great if somebody has some comments on that, either in the Notion page or somewhere else. This is what I just did also put up for this, the question of, do we want to define short and long-term goals or target areas? And I just thought about this, and I think I spoke about that already a little bit. That might be really something that we say, okay, in the first 3 months of when we are live, the market will be fresh, volatility will be high. Either we could, one of the goals would say, okay, we limit funding to a certain amount of tokens quite low, and would try to not already throw huge amounts of tokens towards any projects, but maybe focus on getting marketing, getting the word out, supporting content creators, video creators, education initiatives that explain Shimmer to a broader audience, and basically have as a primary goal to increase the user base of Shimmer. Yeah. This could be something that I could think about. Okay, that would be maybe an interesting goal for Q3. Then we say, okay, sorry, in a moment we're not going to fund huge apps. We are going to fund community initiatives, hackathons, taking part in conferences and things like this to really, first of all, create a bigger user and also maybe a bigger developer base for Shimmer. And then later on, switch focus more on really giving grants out to builders that have then entered the ecosystem because of these outreach initiatives, and they have found Shimmer interesting and they want to do something. They look through the documentation and stuff and they really say, yeah, cool. Now we've seen stuff and now we would be ready to build, and then you can have then Q2 or something like this, focusing more and more in supporting builders and stuff like that. This is maybe something we can make a little plan and think about if this would make sense to have such specific goals for every quarter, or exclude some specific things from funding in the early stages because it would cost a potentially big amount of tokens that we will potentially need later. Not sure about it yet. I think everybody can put a little bit brain power into this and if we find out some good ideas, I would say let's try it out. If not, it's not a hard requirement that we need quarterly goals or quarterly KPIs or something like this. It might be interesting to define it if we come up with something useful, that will not restrict us too much. Yeah. Okay. Any further comments on that? Good.
I will review the other points later because I
Yeah.
just joined.
Yeah. I share. I mean, we have it in the Notion page, but I'm also sharing the presentation with the write up here in the channel, in the Shimmer Treasury channel. One other thing for those of you that have not been here in the beginning, I already told it a bit. We will have on next Tuesday, we will have a guest here. Not the guest, is one of the a leader of the project that builds on Shimmer, or currently they are also part of Touchpoint. They had just their announcement. DeFire, they are building, I think it's also a kind of a yield aggregator and stuff like that. But it will be really interesting because they are already active on several other chains, and they have applied for funding in 12 or 13 of these Web3 grant programs out there. And so they have a lot of experience with the real life situation and the real life processes of getting grants. And they also have approved, I think they have been funded by AVA, and they just got another big grant. I don't know if I'm not allowed to say where it's coming from, but so they have really went through this experience from the builder side. Yeah, so they have applied for grants. They have have had interviews. They did all the stuff, and they will be super happy and to share their experience, and especially will be super happy to answer questions. And so what I have done in the governance discussion channel, there is a post by me, and there is a thread, and if we could collect a couple of questions next until next Tuesday, it would be great, because then he can prepare a little bit. Otherwise, if we don't find questions, we will just go into a chat with him, and he can really tell us a bit something about his experience with Aave, with Polygon, with Near, and I don't know where they all applied, and give some insights how builders approach such thing, what works good, what is not working good, what have been obstacles on their way, what things they would say are absolutely against, and what stuff scares builders away from an ecosystem. Yeah, like I've talked with him already. It's something like if you need a week of work for a team to prepare for a $5,000 grant, it's just something nobody will do. Yeah, it's completely useless. And so he's also this thing. Yeah, the amount of funding that you receive as a team needs to be in relation to the amount of work that you need to put in to the proposal process. Otherwise, it's just not interesting. And I mean, a week work for a team, it's very likely more salary costs than 5K, if you have 2-3 people working on that, and then it's just like absolutely useless for them to apply for any grants. And so I think this will be very helpful for us to take such an opinion into account when we go into the more detailed design of the treasury. Yeah, so would be great if we get some questions there. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question,
Yeah.
follow. For to qualify for funding,
Yeah.
can we also propose that they follow a rigid or not, doesn't necessarily have to be rigid, but follow a formal testing protocol before launching?
You mean something something like an audit or something like that?
Yes.
the the problem is always like this, and I just spoke with Mark Schmidt from our EDF about this today. Most likely, the audit will cost more than the grant. And also audits, first of all, they never guarantee that things work. That's the first problem with audits in the space currently. So you make an audit, the next day you have a bug, and the auditor says, "Yeah, sorry, it's not our responsibility." And usually you have to wait a couple of months until you will get a slot with an auditor. Yeah. So, of course, it would be the super secure and great way, but in reality, um, we will very likely figure out that it won't be feasible because then basically we would also need to pay for the audit. And the costs for these audits are so, I mean, just as far as I'm not really deep in Touchpoint, but of course we hear and see this. So for a very, very simple, um, let's say one-on-one fork or clone of a popular DeFi protocol that is existing there, and a team is really just doing minor changes, you are in the range of 50 to $100,000 very quick just for having a kind of reputable audit firm even looking into it. And you will need 4 to 6 months until you get a slot to get this audit. And so the question is then always, okay, if they ask for 20K, but we would have to spend another 80K for having an audit, that very likely won't work. Yeah. I know what you mean. Maybe potentially there could be some kind of let's say maybe a beta test phase with the community, something like this. The problem is always even in such test phase, because the teams, of course, they will do internal testing. They will also very likely do testing on our testnet and things like this. Really deep bugs in a code base of things you won't find, and even an auditor won't find. So audits are lovely, great, and happy to have, but it needs to be in relation with the amount of funding. Yeah, of course, as of a project, if they ask for 250K, and then it will very likely make sense to put another 50K on top of that to also pay for the audit, especially if they aim for locking a large amount of Shimmer tokens in their protocol. Yeah, so but then I think such projects very often will not approach the community treasury for funding because they might have investors. But what they will do potentially, they will come and ask for to cover the cost of the audit. And this is something that we should definitely do then, to make such bigger projects secure. Yeah. But I think we have to live with the reality that most of the things that we will support will not be, you will never get a guarantee that everything is secure and safe, what they build. Yeah, this is just how the space works, and I don't see, because the costs are just so tremendously high, it just doesn't make sense, I think. But I'm really a fan of this thing, but reality also, I know that for the EDF, it's the same thing. Yeah. Um, they have large grant applications from teams, but if you then would need really to put an audit on top of that, um, it's just not possible to fund such things, because most of the time the audit will be more expensive than the development of the application, and that's not a good relation, I think, for spending funds. Okay, do we have some other open questions here? Something that people want to discuss? Bring some topics up there.
Yeah, Philo, real quick.
Yeah.
I'm sure many of the answers to several questions would be sort of resolved at the beginning during the filtering process.
Mhm.
If I'm correctly, and I go back a couple of months,
Yeah.
we do have a questionnaire,
Yeah.
and I'm sure the questionnaire is going to resolve, especially if we have a website like the one the ICCD is building that is consolidating all of the projects that are participating or would like to participate. And
Yeah.
so I think that's the very first step. And I'm not sure if it's going to be really obvious for everyone to see that a project is actually a good project. Um, and just taking it from Rob's comments,
Mhm.
even if it's source, I think it would be clear that even if it fails, then someone would actually pick it up
Yeah.
as the ideas would begin to flow from the insertion
Yeah.
or the presentation of that project from day one.
Yeah. Like I'm very, for me, I would really go only for open source projects. And like I said, also it really is very important that that the committee collects already extremely good information for the process. And if a project is applying and it is not able to deliver a real good documentation and a real good reasoning behind this proposal, then it just should be something, especially if we look in the limited amount of funding that would be there. And if the proposal is already not well written and not detailed and not done pretty good, then it's very likely that the rest of the product also. So I think it really, first of all, depends on the people that really sit in such a committee to make a proper evaluation there. And of course, we will have some mistakes and failures, especially in the beginning. Potentially, we start, and not everything that we think or the committee will think it's a great project will play out as being a great one. So that's something that we have to live with. Still, I think the net positive, the net outcome of this whole thing can always and will always be positive. So yeah, but it really depends on how this whole thing is set up, which people we find that have the qualification to do process, which way of support we can find to have people or experts look into more deeper details and things like this. Um, yeah, that's I think.
One other thing, Philo,
Mhm.
are we going to potentially roll these projects out in let's say like cohorts? So we have a quarter one cohort, quarter two cohort, so on and so forth. That way, that gives us some time to evaluate the projects before we actually fund them.
Yes, I think this is something that we definitely should talk about and potentially do. Maybe do something like monthly funding runs. Um, so it depends a bit. The thing is, for bigger projects that ask for larger amounts of funding, like I think we currently have this for, especially for stuff that is going beyond $50,000. This, of course, will have a longer evaluation process. There will be milestones to be defined, and so that's not something that will be rushed out in a couple of days. Other things like really, I think currently we have defined everything below $5,000 will go out very quickly. Yeah, and so this is something. Anyway, this will not be applications that are most of this stuff will not be really code based. Yeah, a lot of these things will be potentially will be marketing, community, hackathons, bounties, and things like this. So stuff that will not put funds of users at risk. This can go out easygoing, I think. Yeah. larger projects will need a longer evaluation process, and potentially will even make sense to have, okay, we collect stuff over the month, and then you can also compare which projects have applied, and potentially then have to sort out, and we say, okay, there are 12 applications, but we only have budget to fund 6 of them. And then in the end, you will have the 12, and you really pick the 6 most promising and best looking applications that make the most sense, and the other ones then could, don't know, maybe potentially reapply, or they can come into something like a waiting list and stuff like this. This is stuff that we have to talk about over the next couple of weeks and define exactly how this should be operated. I think this can be a good idea to have such a staged process, because in the end, otherwise it would be first come first, and then you will potentially have rushed applications because people think, okay, we have to get in very early to grab quick funding. And yeah, these are things, I think, once we have these guiding principles and the mission statement really fixed, then we will go into the detailed processes. I will also add some of the ideas we have heard today definitely already into the document, so that we have it also tracked there. And then we can revisit the Word document, the proposal, and refine the structures and the processes, how the committee should, in the end, really operate. Yeah. Okay, my friends. If there are no further questions and additions, I would say we can wrap it up today. We will see you again on next Tuesday. Tuesday it's going to be 4 p.m. and then the first half hour, like I said, will be for DFire from the project that has already this application, grant application experience. Post your questions in the thread in the governance discussions channel that I created, and otherwise we will have a chat, and we can just ask questions in the chat with him. And I talked already with him. He's really a good one, and he has really a nice knowledge and a good feedback on the application processes that they have experienced so far. Until then, I wish you all a nice afternoon, a good evening, or a good morning, wherever you are. And we will see you again on Tuesday. Okay, thanks everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.